they inflict Jeremy back on us again, he will not deliver electoral victory.
The most common expression used by Owen is, "I agree with Jeremy."
We're extremely alarmed at the prospect of having to fight a general election with Jeremy Corbyn as leader.
It's been really tough. I mean, we've gone from gaff to gaff.
We all make mistakes. Jeremy and I have never been on front bench positions.
It needs to stop. The misogyny needs to stop. The anti-Semitism needs to stop.
Momentum has tried to infiltrate the Labour Party.
I don't think Jeremy Corbyn is too far to the left to unite the party. I think the party has shifted.
He's got a huge support group across the nation. There's no reason why he shouldn't be elected at all.
There are always chances, if you don't move with the times in politics, that you will cease to exist.
I'm therefore delighted to declare Jeremy Corbyn elected as leader of the Labour Party.
A year ago, Jeremy Corbyn swept into the Labour leadership with a massive mandate. The left-wing rebel doubled the membership of the party. And yet, the moment after Brexit, when MPs could have attacked the Conservatives, they turned on him, dissatisfied with his leadership.
We need a leader who's going to listen. You've just got to consider sometimes whether you've really found yourself in the right job.
Owen Smith has emerged as the challenger in a divisive battle that some define as a contest between Labour's establishment and this influx of new members.
Jeremy Corbyn and Owen Smith.
Some fear the fight for the direction of the party is ripping it apart.
Labour is at war with itself, and there are doubts whether even this bitter contest can settle it. At stake is not just the leadership, but the heart and soul of the party.
And whether you care about Labour or not, with the challenges facing our country, can this fragmented party hope to regain power or even offer an effective opposition?
Let's together be strong, together be happy, together be united.
In some ways, another leadership campaign is great for Jeremy Corbyn. He's never happier than when on top of a truck speaking to a crowd. And if the polls are right, this contest could cement his position as leader. You can feel the love for Jeremy in an Islington crowd and the growing membership he's attracted in the way you just don't in the corridors of Westminster.
I think Jeremy Corbyn has a very 1970s view of the world that hasn't really shifted very much since then. And I think you saw that in some of the policy ideas that came out in his first leadership campaign, such as women-only train carriages or reopening the coal mines.
I think the mass influx would not be a problem if it were those committed to the Labour Party, not just to a cult or to an individual. If you're part of a almost religious fervour, if you're part of a movement that doesn't in the end give a damn what the consequences are, where they believe what they want to believe.
His grassroots appeal got him elected as leader of the Labour Party just 1 year ago. It was one of the biggest shocks in British political history. Against initial odds of 100 to 1, he beat the more polished centre-ground candidates, having been put forward by the left wing of the party.
We went round the table. I said I've done it twice, couldn't even get on ballot paper. Abbott did it last time, said she'd done her duty. Then we looked at Jeremy and said, it's your turn. And he said, OK, I'll do it. That's the sort of leader...
Was he reluctant?
Well, not reluctant. He's willing to do it on the basis of he's committed to the principles that we're advocating, etc. But he's not a careerist. I've met too many MPs who come into Parliament.
You've got to be a careerist.
No, you've got to have ambition to achieve the implementation of the principles and the policies upon which we think we can transform society. That's what it's all about.
You probably had a pretty good idea you weren't going to win.
Yeah, I was under no illusions that I wasn't going to be winning.
But how did you feel when you saw the huge majority that Jeremy Corbyn got?
It's what I expected.
How did it make you feel?
It made me feel worried for my constituents, actually. They can't see him being a Prime Minister, and they're worried about things like defence, national security and the economy, and they don't think he's right on it.
But MPs were on course for a collision, with the tens of thousands joining the party inspired by Mr Corbyn's anti-austerity message. And with him came a new political movement set up to mobilise left-wing supporters, called Momentum.
My name's Carole Vincent, and I'm a Labour Party member, but I'm also part of the Momentum movement as well. Someone who is so aware of world politics and where we are, you know, where Britain is in the world, but I know his policies are going to be brilliant in terms of housing, education, jobs, you know, and all those, and the NHS.
I don't think Jeremy Corbyn is too far to the left to unite the party, and I'll tell you why. I think the party has shifted. He is a surfer on a wave, and it's the wave that's as important as the surfer.
But within hours of becoming leader, Corbyn's struggle was becoming apparent. Some MPs refused to join his front bench team, and his first cabinet appointments came under scrutiny.
How do you face this criticism that there simply just are not enough women in senior positions in the shadow cabinets? Jeremy, I can't understand why you won't talk to the media.
Jeremy Corbyn!
He offered a new style of leadership.
I ask a question from Claire, from a woman called Marie, from Stephen.
But this inclusive style somehow wasn't felt by MPs.
It's been really tough. I mean, we've gone from gaff to gaff, and some of which have really resonated on the doorstep. So trying to explain that to him, and look, I can't imagine what it was like for him. You're on the back benches for 30 years, and then suddenly you're leader of the Labour Party. You're speaking from the dispatch box. It's been a really, really tough time for him as much as for anyone else.
Mr Corbyn, why would you sing the national anthem?
As he tried to adapt to this new role, the left-wing rebel was struggling to convince his own party that he was electable. Mr Corbyn had his own way of describing his awkward relationship with power.
This room, as you can observe, is far too big for one individual.
It is, right.
And when I sit in here, I feel a bit like a prisoner in a gilded cage.
But just as Jeremy Corbyn seemed to be settling in, his own MPs grew increasingly uncomfortable with his leadership. At this stage, the man who would challenge Corbyn, Owen Smith, was part of Jeremy Corbyn's shadow cabinet. Things simmered, barely beneath the surface. Something would soon trigger an eruption.
People throughout the Labour movement were extremely alarmed at the prospect of having to fight a general election with Jeremy Corbyn as leader.
People thought that if they put pressure on Jeremy, he would resign. They completely underestimated the man.
History has been made, it is being made, as after 43 years the UK has voted to leave the European Union.
Brexit Day. Jeremy Corbyn woke up to political turmoil, and some blaming him. His press team released a script for MPs to use, saying he'd led from the front. But the script was being ignored.
I've called for a motion of no confidence in Jeremy Corbyn as the leader of the Labour Party, and I hope if the motion is passed, he will reflect on his position.
Jeremy could have been a kind of powerful sceptic for Europe. He could have said, look, in the past, I've had concerns, but it wasn't a strong message saying, but this is why I think it's right for Britain now.
Oh, yeah. I love this country, and I feel honoured to have served it. And I will do everything I can in future to help this great country succeed. Thank you very much.
An extraordinary day. The Prime Minister announcing that he is to resign.
We're doing it later. We're doing it later. We've just done every channel.
I know, but the Prime Minister has just resigned. Just some comments about the Prime Minister's resignation. The Prime Minister's just resigned. If we just have one comment, we'll talk more later.
With Cameron's resignation in the immediate wake of that result, the realistic prospect of an early general election arose. Realistic prospect. And people throughout the Labour movement, including members of Parliament, were extremely alarmed at the prospect of having to fight a general election with Jeremy Corbyn as leader.
You're going to resign? Mr Corbyn, how can you stay on as leader? Have you lost the confidence of your party?
What happened was we had a phone call from the Observer saying that Hillary was contacting shadow cabinet members, urging them to resign. Jeremy tried to get hold of Hillary, couldn't get hold of him. Eventually, about midnight, got hold of Hillary. Said to Hillary, look, I understand this is going on. Please withdraw that. And Hillary refused. Unfortunately, what Jeremy had to do was sack him. He couldn't make any free.
I told Jeremy Corbyn last night that I no longer had confidence in his leadership.
Then what happened, we had a sequence of resignations, so clearly there were resignations timed to destabilise, because people thought that if they resigned, put pressure on Jeremy, he would resign.
Jeremy Corbyn's Labour leadership is in crisis as he loses 9 members of his shadow cabinet who want him to go.
My principles say if someone has been elected as your leader by a majority of the members, then you stick with them, you work with them.
But when the parliamentary party met with their leader in a private gathering, many asked him to resign. An impassioned speech by Neil Kinnock was secretly recorded.
Everybody in this room knows. Canvassing in the Welsh elections, in the Scottish elections, in the local elections, in the referendum, you know that is what you're getting from people who yearn to vote Labour but are inhibited by the fact that Jeremy is still our leader. There will be no split. There will be no retreat. Damn it, this is our party. I've been in it for 60 years. I'm not leaving it to anybody. Any chance?
Simply telling the truth. Even someone with a normal amount of modesty, not to say humility, would look at the opinion of the people with whom he worked and say, I am unsustainable as the leader.
They completely underestimated the man, not because of his own personal characteristics of commitment and dedication, but more about the principles he stands for, which is he was elected to represent the party with an overwhelming mandate. He wasn't going to let people down. That's why he stayed there.
Jeremy Corbyn tried to pull together a new cabinet of relative novice MPs. An influx of new members were signing up. A court battle ensued when Labour's ruling body decided that 130,000 members who joined within the last 6 months wouldn't be allowed to vote. Then followed allegations of a purge.
At the beginning of this year, I suddenly got a letter in February to say that in January a decision by the local CLP was that they didn't really want me to be a member. So I've then had to fight that and appeal again and go through interview and and quote the Labour Party values back to the party.
But MPs say if they knew what he was like to work with, the members would think twice about supporting him.
I went to see Jeremy once to talk about policy, and I asked him about an area of policy that's really important for us down here, and it was an area of policy that he's not particularly interested in. And he answered a completely different question. So I said, I need your advice about this particular area of policy. So, what are your thoughts? How do I speak about this in a way that's not going to compromise you? And then he sat, and his head dropped, and he stared at the floor. He didn't obfuscate. He didn't use a rhetorical flourish to avoid answering me. He sat in silence, looking at the floor. That is an example of what it is like being a new MP that is trying to get guidance and leadership and support from a leader that simply doesn't have the skills needed to lead.
I turned the radio on in Wallasey one morning to find out that there'd been an announcement pre-briefed from a speech Jeremy was going to be making about companies being banned from paying dividends if they didn't pay the minimum wage. A completely incoherent policy suggestion. I knew nothing about it. I'm meant to be the Shadow Business Secretary, so I phoned up Neil Coleman, who was then the head of policy in the Leader's office, to ask him what the hell was going on, and he knew nothing about it either. Then I started getting huge numbers of calls from my own shadow team who were outraged because it's just an unworkable suggestion and nobody knew it was going to be made. I got calls from journalists and I had to put them off because I didn't know what was going on. You can't have a team approach when that's going on.
It's a sign of how bitter this split has become that even former shadow cabinet ministers will spill the beans on their frustrations.
Jeremy and people like me saying, tell us what mistakes were made, how can we improve, work with us to improve and overcome those problems, and in that way we form a new team. I think that can prove extremely effective.
Well, here's the problem with that. A lot of people say Jeremy just doesn't listen.
Well, I don't accept that. He's the most open politician I've met.
Even with the Cabinet, you're saying that some say there have been announcements made when they haven't been consulted about them and they are on their brief.
Well, again, if that's been a problem in the past, come and tell us. We didn't know that until this coup occurred. If that's been a problem in the past, come and tell us. We'll work out a new system, how we work together, so people are feel in control.
It's a pretty big criticism, though, isn't it?
I don't think it's an accurate criticism, but if it is, give us the examples. Let's see how we can learn from that. We all make mistakes. Jeremy and I have never been on front bench positions, but when he's been in Parliament 30 years, I've been in Parliament nearly 20 years. We're all learning rapidly, so I want to learn from our critics.
But something else has cast a shadow over this bitter contest. Allegations of abuse, intimidation, misogyny and anti-Semitism.
In the last 12 months, something horrendous has been unleashed. We're at an event, a self-proclaimed momentum activist started handing out a press release. It's about deselecting MPs. He was told I was Jewish by someone with me. So there was background before the cameras came on.
The event was to announce the findings of an investigation into anti-Semitism within the Labour Party.
This man stood up, asked a question and just started attacking me.
I saw that the Telegraph handed a copy of a press release to Ruth Smeeth MP, so you can see who's working hand in hand. The question is this.
When I tried to defend myself and got shouted down by the audience, who had been invited not by the Labour Party but by the Leader's office, and Jeremy stood there. Leadership is about sending a message, but it's also about intervening. When I saw the video of his interactions afterwards with the person from Momentum, it was extraordinary.
But defenders of Mr Corbyn argue he was clear in stating his intolerance of anti-Semitism.
Under my leadership, the Labour Party will not allow hateful language or debate in person, online or anywhere else. We will aim to set the gold standard, not just for anti-racism, but for a genuinely welcoming environment for all communities.
Abuse has been in politics in this country in a way which I think is unacceptable. Jeremy has made statements condemning that. We now have a system put in place in the Labour Party, so if abuse occurs, people are suspended and kicked out.
I've had a lot of personal intimidation, but I suppose I expect that because I put my head above the parapet first. You know, I've had death threats. I don't want to talk about it a lot, though, because every time I talk about it, I just get an avalanche of more of it. The brick through my office block is, I've been told that I threw it, that it didn't happen, that it's all lies, and many people retweet that. It did happen. And it's as simple as that.
You're convinced it was because you stood as a candidate. It happened on the day.
I've not made any statement about what it was. It simply happened the night I declared. That's all I've ever said about it. But it did happen.
Yes.
And I didn't do it.
I've spoken to colleagues in there who've had abusive tweets, death threats. Completely outrageous, completely unacceptable. Do I think Jeremy Corbyn has done enough? I think Jeremy Corbyn has been very outspoken and said that he's opposed this at every opportunity he's been asked.
The more than doubling of Labour's membership in the last 18 months means the party has changed underneath the MPs, and the bitter fight in Westminster is accompanied by a chaotic ground war.
They encouraged their members to go and join the Labour Party and infiltrate at all levels. That was the wording. It was to take over at every level they could.
There are 2,200 in my membership now, most of whom I don't know. So of course if they want to deselect me, they can deselect me.
In July this year, the Brighton constituency Labour Party was suspended and elections for the local party were annulled. Nicky was voted off the Labour executive but was told by the National Party to stay on.
My name is Nicky, Easton, and I'm acting Vice Chair campaigns of the Brighton Hove and District Labour Party. Obviously, it's it's a bit of a weird situation to be in.
What happened here appears to reflect what's happening across the entire Labour Party. There is a battle for ownership, and it's become very bitter. Put simply, a battle between Corbyn's new Momentum members and the existing party. Momentum member Greg Hadfield was voted in as a local Labour secretary before the decision to annul the vote.
My name is Greg Hadfield. I was elected secretary of Brighton Hove and District Labour Party on July the 9th, and then the results were annulled 4 days later.
How do you feel about the fact that the results were annulled?
I've never been more shocked in my life. Literally within 4 days of being elected with 66% share of the vote, that for no obvious reason, the whole of Brighton Hove and District Labour Party was suspended.
Some think the party should have been suspended because of the way the elections were conducted.
Ivor Caplin, former MP for Hove. And this is meant to be a secret ballot for the chair of Brighton Hove and District Labour Party. The ballot papers were placed into an open container.
There were complaints that people who weren't members were sitting in the hall. There's a whole set of ballot papers. People were grabbing them, multiples of them. It was impossible to stop them.
Staff at the university building where the AGM was held say they were overwhelmed, partly because the turnout was higher than expected, fuelled by a Momentum rally that had been held directly before the event. Indeed, several key positions in the ballot went to Momentum members, and some say that is what this is all about.
The 5 candidates who won more than 60% of the vote, all of us, happened to mention that they supported Jeremy Corbyn. The two things are connected.
Daniel Harris is another Corbyn supporter.
My name's Daniel Harris, and I was elected as a lay member. It lasted 24 hours.
Here's what I'm hearing. So things like candidates ushering in people without checking their membership, multiple ballot papers being grabbed, buckets which weren't necessarily being properly checked when the ballots were going in. You're smiling. None of this. You think
It just makes me
this
laugh.
is all made up?
It just makes me laugh. It just makes me laugh. And it's just, the problem is, you've got people like me who's living in emergency accommodation. You know, I'm homeless. You know, you've got people like me, which are real people that are now, the lead members of the biggest party in the country.
Yeah.
You know, that's not what people want. You know, you've got people
So that's
why
the NEC are investigating this, because they don't like you.
I see it as an attack on people like me, yeah, absolutely.
Some object to Daniel becoming a Labour Party administrator as he used to be a Green Party member. But Phil Clarke, who was elected onto the local executive, actually stood against the Labour Party 3 times as a member of the Trade Unionists and Socialist Workers Coalition, most recently last May.
My name's Phil Clarke. I was elected to the local executive of the Brighton Hove District Labour Party. I didn't think, and I was wrong, that someone like Jeremy Corbyn would ever rise to be leader of the Labour Party. I felt it was too undemocratic. Once that had happened, it would seem the obvious thing to do to join. It would seem like standing aside from what was a very important political process not to get involved.
It's emerged that the leader of the Labour Council wrote an email to members several days before the AGM ballot. It said, "Next Saturday, our City Labour Party faces a takeover from groups of individuals from Momentum, TUSC, the Alliance for Workers' Liberty, and other fringe left-wing groups, including people who have repeatedly run against Labour candidates."
We know that they had a conference or something last November sometime in which they encouraged their members to go and join the Labour Party and infiltrate at all levels. But that was the wording, it was to take over at every level they could.
It's alleged that the man elected as local party chair, Mark Sandell, had a previous political affiliation to the Alliance for Workers' Liberty, a revolutionary Trotskyite group. The AWL website makes references to him as an activist. Mr. Sandell turned down our request for an interview.
I think if we'd been able to know that in advance, I think most people would have said he's not suitable to be chair of the Labour Party locally.
This is a guy who's standing for chair, and yet nobody really knows anything about his background.
Well, that's been one of the problems. This sort of Momentum fan club has tried and successfully here, at least partly successfully, to infiltrate the Labour Party.
My main concern is that we're getting back to those days when the big political question was, are you or have you ever been? The McCarthy question.
But once you know who the candidates are and they've been selected, then you check and you say, hang on a second, we've got a chair of our party who used to campaign for another party. We're concerned about that. Is that a legitimate concern?
It's a if Ivor Caplin is worried about that, he had 11 days to mention it. When did he mention it first? Yeah, I know. It was after they lost.
But who are they losing to? Is this an echo of the past, of the ultra-left revolutionary groups, the Trotskyites, who infiltrated Labour in the 1980s, leading to Neil Kinnock's famous Bournemouth conference speech of 1985?
And you go through the years sticking to that, outdated, misplaced, irrelevant to the real needs, and you end in the grotesque chaos of a Labour council hiring taxis to scuttle around a city, handing out redundancy notices to its own workers.
The then Labour leader purged his party of the group called Militant and characters like Derek Hatton. But is history repeating itself with the emergence of Momentum?
They'll compare for no real reason other than they are against the establishment generally and the establishment within the Labour Party. And the Labour Party establishment can be probably the most ruthless when actually it sees itself up against some sort of opposition, which is what you're seeing at the moment.
There will be people in Momentum who will share the objectives of the ultra-left, of the militant tendency. But Momentum is interesting in the sense that it appears to be a parallel party, for want of a better term, with its own organisation, its own executive, its own contributions, its own membership. That is something with which the Labour Party has never had to deal before.
I think we've got a very major problem with Momentum, and win or lose the battle to take the party back, we're still going to have a problem with Momentum, because it's become so enmeshed with the Labour Party structures, with the local branches and constituencies, this is going to be a major problem for many years to come.
Some feel the militant tendency is creeping back here in Brighton, 3 decades after Neil Kinnock got rid of them. Others see this as simple democracy.
This talk of entrism is just nonsense. No one has entered or taken over the party in Brighton and Hove. The members have taken back the party in Brighton and Hove, and that's what upset the right wing.
But what does all this mean for the local MP, who won a close-fought campaign here in 2015 with the help of local members?
I walk past homes and I know where each of those people lives because it's so imprinted on my memory. I got to know them, they got to know me.
In less than a year, his membership has quadrupled, with the new intake applying to run the local party.
I was trying to sort of figure out who some of these people were, and then it was only afterwards that I realised that some of them had actually stood against Labour. Some of my own colleagues, people I've been with on doorsteps and campaigning and out in the rain and the cold, they've stood against them.
Now these new members outnumber those who fought with Kyle on the doorstep, and some have suggested that he should be ousted as the local MP through a process of deselection.
I would have concerns about Peter Kyle, whose allegiance seems to be more to the Progress Party than to the values of the Labour Party, and his chronic disloyalty. He said, I will not be bullied into uniting behind a loser. Well, who's bullied an MP? And uniting behind a loser? What has Jeremy Corbyn lost?
Are you worried about deselection? But do you think it could happen?
Of course I do. They have the numbers. You know, there are 2,200 in my membership now, most of whom I don't know. So of course, if they want to deselect me, they can deselect me. Everything is in our membership now. We have the people who are young and utopian. We have people who are older but suddenly decided after all these years of voting Labour they want to get into the fight because of what the Tories are doing to our party. But we also have the Trotskyites and the revolutionary communists and all the rest of it who've just come in small numbers who are causing trouble.
Small? Aren't they too small to cause too much trouble? I mean, there aren't that many Trotskyites.
Have you ever been in a room with one of them?
Yes, I have.
Well, I'm surprised you're asking the question.
My experience of Momentum, the vast majority of people involved in Momentum are normal, decent members, many of them. Some of them aren't, but the vast majority of them are members of the Labour Party who are campaigning for Jeremy Corbyn and want to see what we've called a different type of politics.
In all this turmoil, can a relative unknown become the great unifier? Owen Smith, even though he claims to be left-wing, has emerged as the big hope of the progressive moderates within the party. But he's already causing his own divisions with his suggestion of a second EU referendum. Is Smeeth really the man who can save the party from breaking up?
He'll not win a general election calling for a second European referendum.
If we close our minds, we won't move with the times, and then we will deserve to die as a political force.
Always does when we come back to power. I am incredibly proud to be addressing you today, asking for you to put your faith in me to be the next leader of the Labour Party. Incredibly proud.
Jeremy Corbyn's challenger appears to have come from nowhere. Owen Smith describes himself as radical and credible, but who is he? A Bruce Springsteen fan, he was raised in South Wales. He was a keen rugby player. The 1984 miners' strike was his political awakening. He joined Labour at the age of 16 after campaigning on the picket line outside Tata Steel. Critics say he's too slick, a return to the new Labour model of spin and win, and there's suspicion that a former lobbyist for a drugs manufacturer might not want an NHS free from private investment. He insists he is left-wing, but more electable. But polls suggest he hasn't yet won over the Labour membership.
We will not be looked at as a serious alternative government, and that's what we've got to be if we're to rescue the NHS.
OK, which is all well and good, but you're toast, aren't you? I mean, you've got no chance of being Labour leader.
Oh, well, I don't agree with that at all. There's been one poll that puts me 20 points behind, but the truth is...
24 points, in fact.
Yeah, well, the truth is it's a poll that is based on last year's data, last year's selectorate.
The hustings so far have highlighted Smith's objection to Corbyn's desire to scrap Trident. He wants to fight to remain in the EU. Beyond that, he often compares himself with the man he's trying to oust.
We both want to scrap the trade union bill. We both want to introduce proper workers' rights from day one. We both want to introduce a living wage. We both want to get rid of the public sector pay freeze. We both want to invest in the NHS.
The most common expression used by Owen is, I agree with Jeremy. So I'm hoping that when the leadership election is over, I'm hoping Jeremy wins, and then Owen will come back in the shadow cabinet and work with us.
That's part of your pitch, isn't it? You do have similar policies to Jeremy Corbyn.
Well, it's not a pitch, it's just the truth. I'm
Well, then
someone who's
if
always thought that he's a socialist. I'm someone who's always believed that we need left alternatives.
Why are you more electable? If you're the same guy.
Because I think there are some key differences between Jeremy and myself. I think I'm able to speak to a broader set of concerns in the country. But in other regards, business wants a Labour Party that's going to argue for us to remain within the European Union.
I just say I'm a young person and I absolutely love what you're doing. I want you as Prime Minister.
Oh, thank you.
I just want to
That's
thank
really
you
good
because
of
you
you to say.
instill a lot of hope in me and a lot of other young people I know.
Can I ask who you backed last time?
I actually voted for Jeremy.
Whoever wins, could they become Prime Minister? Struggling with UKIP in the north and the SNP in Scotland, the next leader will have to answer what and who the Labour Party is for. Worksop has been Labour since before the war.
All the tools, 22.
But in the Miners' Welfare Social Club, the vast majority here voted for Brexit, even though most of Labour's 230 MPs campaigned to remain in the EU.
Some of the Labour wards were 90+% to leave, and they didn't see it coming. That's a big problem for the Labour Party.
Can I get a hands up for who voted to leave the EU? 1, 2, 3, 4. All of you.
As far as immigrants are concerned, don't get me wrong, I'm no colour bar or anything like that. They're nice people, but there's too many of them now. We're only an island, you can't go on forever. And I do think it like she said, Gisela Stewart, you've got to build more houses. You can't cater for them if you don't know they're coming.
Where do you stand on Owen Smith?
Well, I mean, won't be as bad as Corbyn. Some smart stuff. But if Owen Smith becomes Labour leader, he's going to have to change his policy on the European Union instantly, because he will get...
He's not going to, is he? Because he'll see that as the one thing that differentiates him from Jeremy Corbyn.
But that's from short-term politics, isn't it? You know, he's trying to appeal to the same out-of-touch Labour Party membership who voted Jeremy in. That's the problem.
If Labour seems disconnected with its voters in the north, it's close to irrelevance in Scotland. Once a stronghold, now the SNP has 56 seats to Labour's 1. The leader of the Labour Party in Scotland is backing Owen Smith.
If I was in the position that Jeremy Corbyn was in, where I had lost the support of 80% of my parliamentary colleagues, it would make my job not just incredibly difficult, but impossible. And that's why I think we need new leadership. Actually, their policy platforms are pretty similar. The difference is the credibility, the belief, the desire to be Prime Minister, to achieve a Labour government. And that's what I see in Owen Smith that I didn't see in Jeremy Corbyn.
Do you think he didn't want to be Prime Minister?
I'm not convinced that is what gets him up and motivates him every morning.
But at the Glasgow hustings, many say Corbyn is the answer for Scotland.
He has the confidence of his councillors. We're both councillors, elected councillors.
You're both elected councillors?
Yes, we are.
Yeah, and we're fully in support of him. He has our confidence. He has the confidence of the majority of people in Paisley.
Overwhelmingly voted for him, and that's where he should be. We should not be doing this leadership contest.
But outside on the streets, there's little faith in either candidate.
Do you think either of them can cut through in Scotland against the SNP?
No, I don't think either of them have got it. I really don't.
Why not?
I just don't think they're strong enough.
I don't think they can do it. I think the SNP have taken their ground.
Yeah.
You know, they've occupied the sort of bit that Labour used to occupy, so I don't think they've a hope. I think the Tories have got more chance.
Labour just doesn't have the talents or the names at its disposal that it had, 10, 20 years ago. And that's a long-term fundamental problem.
It seems both in Scotland and the north of England there's a frustration at how a globalised economy has left many communities behind, and traditional parties have failed to offer a solution. While Labour struggles to find a post-Blair ideology, many of its voters have deserted the centre ground.
I think what we're seeing is, both on the right and the hard left, that they're kind of trying to go back. They're going into the past, turning their back on the world. But you cannot disinvent globalisation. And our job, our mission in the Labour Party is to make that economy work for all. So the country needs an effective Labour Party now more than ever before. And that's actually ultimately why I'm optimistic, because the Tories won't do it.
If you think about it, when you look across Europe, you look over in America, Bernie Sanders, you can see that across the Western world, social democracy has been in crisis and that there has been a change. There is a feeling that something isn't working. The system isn't working, the old style of politics isn't working. And I think Jeremy Corbyn has tapped into that.
That social uprising goes against the ideology that put Labour into government. Tony Blair got into number 10 with centre-ground policies, embracing business and pushing forward a social reform programme. The left felt it wasn't radical enough, discredited further by a controversial war. For many, Stop the War campaigner Jeremy Corbyn draws a thick line under the Blairite era. But others won't completely abandon the platform that gave them more than a decade in power.
There is a mythology, peddled by people who ought to know better, that somehow we let people down by being in government and by not being radical enough. I would be absolutely heartbroken and mortified to see the vehicle that has brought about so much radical change just destroyed overnight.
Those fighting against the party's transformation, if they lose, are left with a choice: unite or break away.
There will not be a breakaway party. Does anyone really think that people like me are going to be forced out of the party by some middle-class polytechnic lecturer types? They have another thing coming.
If you don't move with the times in politics, you will cease to exist. But if we close our minds, we won't move with the times, and then we will deserve to die as a political force.
Interestingly enough, in the summer we've been talking to lots of people. People are calmed down, they're slowly coming back, cooperating. If Jeremy wins, the Labour MPs are Democrats above all else. They'll recognise the mandate he's got and we'll work together again.
There will be no split. There won't be a split because even people with the most deep and firm objections to Jeremy Corbyn, they are not going to leave the party to anyone else. They're going to fight on.
Owen is, whether he believes it or not, is a bridge back to a way the party was operating, if you want a kind of more Blairite top-down control party, a bridge to that. If he did win, I think it would be a staging post back to something which is more aggressive, and I don't think that's appropriate for many people.
I'm embarrassed when I turn on the TV and I look at what my party is doing to itself. It's not pretty, it's very far from pretty, but the reason people are so impassioned about it is they care so deeply about this party and this movement, and they want it to achieve great things again, and everybody's motivated by what their heart and their head are telling them to do, and I think it can be good again.
But with Labour so fragmented, can either candidate unify the party, form an effective opposition and chart a course back to power?